And you've been in hip hop for 3 decades now. That's amazing. That is amazing. Right. You've watched the culture grow and change in so many ways and witnessed so many pivotal moments, right? You had friendships with both Biggie and Pac.
Yeah.
You just spoke about, what are you talking about all the time? You talking about life, you talking about death. It brings up how Pac was definitely talking about death a lot of times, what was that time period like during the East Coast and West Coast beef?
Man, it was a tense time. It was a tense time for people who had friends on both sides. You know, when you friends with Pop and you friends with Biggie, that's a tense time when you see your two homies going at it. You know, and how do you get into the middle of that, being a young man, being 21 to 25 years old, without picking a side? You know, so you tended to stay out of it, but you didn't think that the course of action will take it that well, both of them will lose their lives. You thought maybe the worst, they might have a fist fight and become friends again. But what it really showed was the power and the influence of the culture of hip hop. You know, magazines ran with it because it sold magazines. Interviewers and disc jockeys, DJs, radio DJs, and VJs, they ran with it because it brought viewership to their networks. But what it did to the culture, what it did to the families, the Shakur family, what it did to you know Christopher Wallace family, their loved ones and friends, what it did to the culture of hip hop, is sad.
Yeah, most definitely. And I can't imagine being that such young of an age, right? Especially because they say, men we develop later, so like our brains are still developing at that
Yeah.
time. Finding the verbiage, finding the way to communicate to both sides, like, hey, how can we put an end to this? So, what did you have any conversations with both sides at that time about, hey, like, how can we put an end to this?
I didn't have a specific conversation with Biggie or Pac about the beef, but I was around a lot of times when it was discussed. And I'm not a lot of times, but a few times when it was discussed, like being in the studio with Big and just hearing him say, man, he'll get over that. Like he loved Pac. You know, he was like, man, it's like talking about one of your friends, like he'll come around, he'll get over that. You know, whereas Pac felt disrespected. You know, he felt like you disrespected me. You know, and it was just two sides of it. You know, Big was nonchalant about it. Pac was, man, we don't like that. You know, and I'm gonna make you feel just as disrespected as you made me feel.
Yeah, and then I was watching Drink Champs, your guys' interview on Drink Champs, and the way that you explained like how his blood would boil, right? Situation
Mm-hmm.
with being in the car with Janet Jackson, like just
Mm-hmm.
those different things. Like Pac was a amazing person, very passionate.
Very, very passionate.
Whatever it is that
Very passionate.
he was very passionate about it. So the when you were speaking with Biggie and he said he would get over it, was this post hit him up or before?
I think it might have been. It was post hit him up, I believe. Like Biggie didn't really think like too much of it. Like he didn't. You could tell he wasn't thinking. At least he portrayed that it didn't bother him really. Like this is something that had come around.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't really show us the people around him that he really cared that much. Big was a funny guy too, man. He was a funny guy, a big guy that the girls loved. You know, so he had a humor about him that everything was just jovial.
And I think that a lot of people don't realize that they died at 24 and 25,
Yeah.
right? It's like the amount that they were able to accomplish at such a young age. It's truly unfortunate that they didn't get to live to see 50 years old because
Whew.
I mean, you know, when you see like even other celebrities, like actors or something, like Robert Downey Jr., right? He was wilding out at one point, but he got to live to, you know, make up for his mistakes or, you know, laugh at those moments. But they didn't get to do that. And it really makes you think like, where would they be at in life now had that moment passed and cooler heads had prevailed or whatever the situation may be?
Yeah, man. I just cry out to all of the young people out there, man, our youthful people. You're allowed to make mistakes. And if you're allowed to make mistakes, that means that your peers are allowed to make mistakes as well. I just ask the young people and cry out to the young people that when somebody makes them a mistake, allow them to get over it and grow. Because if they grow, they might not be the same person that made that mistake against you, by you, near you. Just mistake, period. You know, sometimes when you're allowed to grow, like you said, the Robert Downey Jr., you know, he's a different man. Let him grow into manhood. Let them become men. If it's that important to you, fist fight. But nobody wants to fist fight anymore. Nobody wants to do that. You
Right.
know, deal with it in a situation that you get to go home and live another day. Because if Tupac was still alive, I'm sure at minimum he would have been mayor of Baltimore or mayor of Oakland. You know, if Biggie was still alive, Biggie could be a billionaire instead of Jay-Z, or both of them. You know what I mean? So I'm sure that the lives would be changed of so many different people if they were still here, and the life and the culture of hip hop would be altered in a certain way that's unexplainable.